Hey guys, welcome back to another League video, and today we're going to be reviewing patch 14.10, also known as the Midseason patch for League of Legends. Now, I normally don't do this with the Midseason update because I feel like it's not as big or impactful compared to the new season updates they do at the start of every year. But this one's worth mentioning and going over because I think for most people, Season 14 has been very divisive. On one hand, you have a group of people who say that this season revitalized their enjoyment for the game and made them really want to continue playing, while others have said this was even worse than it was before. Actually, I should probably make this a bit bigger. For most of you, I'm sure, as you already do, you could just minimize the video and treat it as a podcast, especially for those who already know what the changes are and just want to hear my thoughts on it. I'll do my best to cover as much as I can. It's quite a few mini changes to break down and then a few major ones, so I'll mostly cover the major ones. Starting with the adjustments to Corki. Corki is, for lack of a better term, getting reverted. So before the Marksman update back in Season 6, I think, yeah, like Season 6, Corki used to be mostly a physical damage dealer who could do a small amount of magic damage on the side. He was a Triforce user, next to Kog'Maw before Kog'Maw became an on-hit machine, and very similar to Ezreal, I guess, he'd be a side grade in the sense. But then they turned him into more of a magic damage dealer to make him a magic damage AD carry. This has made it difficult for him to capitalize on either mage items or marksman items and has put him in a pretty uncomfortable position for many years. There were a few times where he had a major presence in the meta, but overall I think Corki is struggling from a lack of identity, and I think his rework made him all the worse because of it. So they're essentially reverting him back, where they're taking his package out and they're removing the magic damage component of his passive and reinstating the original one he had, where he does bonus true damage on every single attack. I'm a fan of that because I think that allows Corki to be more of a AD carry again like he was before, and that's further reinforced by his E doing 100% physical damage instead of half and half, and his ultimate also doing physical damage. In addition to that, they're making it so basic attacks increase, or rather refund, the cooldown of the ammo recharge time based on crit chance. Corki had no real incentive to build crit chance because he was more of an ability caster, not an auto attacker. This is bringing him back into being an auto attacker who can do a bit of ability damage on the side. With the removal of package, some people might say his teamfight impact is not quite as good as it used to be, and while that may appear to be the case at a surface glance, the package was also hogging up a lot of his power budget, making the rest of his abilities kind of weak without it. So I do think that by having him back to his original state, that would be at least a good starting point to figure out what they can do from there. It's a lot easier to balance Corki if he's more in line with the AD carries than when he's in this weird limbo between being a mage and an AD carry, but not quite either at the same time. I guess my overall assessment of Corki's mid-scope adjustment, or kind of his reversion, is we'll have to wait and see. That's kind of the overall feel I have for this entire patch, is we'll have to wait and see, since what they're doing is essentially going back to how things were before, for only a portion of the game, not all of it. Few balance changes here, we don't have to worry about that all too much. We're going to go down to summoner spells. Summoner spells are essentially being tuned to be more impactful but less accessible, meaning having your sums down is actually a big deal and having your sums up is an even bigger one. Ghost is getting heavily nerfed, that's the most important one, which I think is fine. Even though I do play a few champions that make use of Ghost pretty liberally, like Darius, it has gotten buffed a lot over the years. It used to be a pretty bad rune back in like Season 4 and 5, but then it slowly crept up in value to where now almost everyone has been taking Ghost because it's 15 seconds of extreme tempo, right? Like, who wouldn't want to build this? In most cases, Ghost is better than Flash because of it. So they're kind of nerfing it to where it's no longer as like pick ban. Summer spells can't be banned, but you get the point. It's not 100% pick rate as it used to be. Okay, items. There's a few sections to go over. We have to compartmentalize things a bit. Starting with boots. Boots are getting adjusted now. Mobility boots are getting removed and replaced with symbiotic souls and synchronized souls. This is essentially the new Mobi boots. The way it works is that in exchange for less movement speed, you get an empowered recall. I don't remember. I think I had to watch Fandor's video on it again, and I'll let you know in a bit. I don't remember if the recall is equivalent to Baron recall or if it's 6 seconds instead of 4. I hope it's not 4, because even if it doesn't give combat stats in any way, an empowered recall is very substantial. It can help you get to places a lot faster and increase your rotation tempo. After walking a certain amount of units, you can then get an empowered one where it's a hybrid between Baron recall and Mobi boots, if that makes sense. Essentially, junglers and supports can't just like first purchase Mobi boots and go to town on everyone. Next one is Merc Treads. The reason why I want to cover Merc Treads and not any of the other boots is because, or no, not even further, they're reducing the tenacity to 20%. You may remember we lost the tenacity you get on unflinching, and overall unflinching is turned into a very terrible rune. More importantly though, later when we talk about runes, we'll address tenacity in a moment. So with these boots is now gaining the Furor enhancement, if you remember that. So they used to be Alacrity, Home Guards, Furor, like, you know, those like little badges you put on the boots to give them more stats. And in exchange, it's losing a bit of the movement speed. In fact, it's losing all of the empowered stuff. Now it's just the regular boots. It even doesn't have the slow resist anymore. I hope they find some way to reinstate that though, because I do think slow resist is pretty important for certain opponents like Mundo, Olaf, and Darius. That might be the reason why they're taking it away, because slow resist kind of hard counters them, but they took away the slow resist from unflinching as well. You needed both of them to really stand a chance against them. One important thing to make note of is that Zephyr is now a boots item. It is a direct upgrade to Berserker's Grease, or it's a full point upgrade to it. I think the reason they did this for only Berserkers and not the other items is because, unlike the other items, which scaled pretty reasonably, or at the very least relatively better than Berserkers and the late game, because Berserkers is just attack speed, it's just a stat stick. That might justify why they're allowing Berserker's Grease to receive an upgrade and not any of these items. I still think in the spirit of fairness, they should add some semblance of an upgraded version for any of these items, not to like make the property even stronger, but just to give more stats, because many players, if they could, would prefer to get rid of their boots for a 6th item. They just can't, because movement speed is just super important in this game. In a way, that was kind of what the enhancements were for before they took it out, and again, I hope that they reinstate it, because it would be nice for boots to be more than just movement speed. As for Zephyr though, you have to be 15 or higher to purchase it, so this is exclusively a late game item. Gives you the slow resist here, which kind of sucks. I hate the fact that now only 80 carries can do it. I guess not only 80 carries, I suppose other champions could swap out their Ninja Tabby for Zephyr and go for it that way, because you get 65 movement speed as well. It is definitely not a gold efficient item, because they took away the tenacity and AD from it that it used to have. So this is only after you're like full built and you have nothing else to purchase. Okay, so moving on to epic items, we're mostly going to talk about Faded Ashes. Faded Ashes is a new component item that lets you do damage over time to enemies whenever you use abilities on them. This is almost identical to how Demonic Embrace functioned before they took it away, and it will be responsible for building into the Blackfire Torch, which is an old item that we used to have. I do remember the name, it's very familiar to me, but I forget exactly what it was for. Anyways, we'll talk about that in a moment. Most of the stuff doesn't really matter too much except Scout's Slingshot, which is an attack speed item that gives you front-loaded damage, and then you can reduce the cooldown just by attacking. Nothing too significant, but they're component items, they're not meant to be. As to the actual ADC items, the overall direction they're trying to take with this is to go back to how things were. I think the key issue with ADC items and why they're always being reworked over and over again is that they are being reworked over and over again. For me, every time Riot tries to do something drastic for the ADC class, especially in itemization, it's always one step forward, 2 steps back. I would much rather, not just for the sake of, I guess, practicality, I would rather they just commit to a system and do their best to try to balance that going forward, instead of starting over and doing a bunch of different things like they did for the past few years. Because if you look at what they're doing for Bloodthirster, they're bringing it back to where it was pre-mythic item. They're essentially reverting it back to just being an AD item and a lifesteal item, which means technically non-AD carries can build this too for practical gain. Like you can see this on Fiora or even Camille. And then if you go down to Essence Revert, they're taking away the Spellblade component of it and bringing it back to being an on-hit effect, basic attack mana thing, whatever it's called. So yeah, essentially they're reverting ADCs back to pre-mythic item changes. While I do believe the mythic item system was somewhat decent for AD carries and at least surviving the early game, it definitely made things pretty gimmicky for them. So I'm glad they're going back to how things were before, but that kind of opens up a new problem, which I'll elaborate more on after I continue talking about the items. Immortal Shield Bow, by the way, is losing lifesteal completely, so now it's just a lifeline shield kind of item. Very similar to like Mon Mortis and Starks. Kraken Slayer is now being changed to give bonus movement speed, making it a bit more effective as a first purchase item. It used to be a first purchase item, then it kind of wasn't, and then it was again, and then it wasn't again, and now it's back to this. Marksman's losing its status as a crit item, and is now going back to what it was before, where it was attack damage, magic resist, and lifesteal. That means you might find Riven, Fiora, Irelia, Camille and stuff building it again, which is, I don't know how to think about that, but definitely it will be used more often again. The weird thing about ADCs is that ADCs prefer to not build QSS at all, because even if they get CC'd for only half a second, that's enough time for them to get one-shotted. So they would much rather just build full damage and try to one-shot first. Bruisers and fighters, on the other hand, do want to build Quicksilver Sash since they can last a bit longer, so Marksman is more of a, like I said, it's more of a fighter item, not really an ADC item. Navori Quick Blades is being adjusted to turn into one of the attack speed crit zeal items, like you have Phantom Dancer, Rapid Fire Cannon, Rune Hurricane, and to some extent Static Shiv. These 5 items will essentially all provide more or less the same stats, but with their own quirks to them, like they did before. We used to have a pick your poison type deal. They gave them attack damage initially to make it more applicable as a second mid-game purchase item, but now they're trying to bring it back to what it was before, where it's a low-cost way to get a bunch of attack speed, a bunch of movement speed, and a bunch of crit chance. Speaking of crit chance, all crit items are going back to 25% instead of 20%, which is important because it means ADCs can cap out their crit by 4 items and not 5. Naturally, this means they can scale a lot faster too. The new item they're adding for Marksman is Yuntal Wild Arrows, which is a weird version of Infinity Edge. You can build both, and I actually think a lot of people will because you can combine the bonus crit damage from IE with this and have your first auto attack, or you can start like one-tapping people with Draven and stuff. Because not only will you do bonus crit damage, but you'll also do a bunch of damage over time on top of that. When I first saw this item, I thought to myself, this item kinda sucks, but then the more I think about it, wait, you can build both Infinity Edge and this, and have your first few auto attacks do like thousands of damage each. Good item to have for anyone who likes to open really strong, or someone who likes to go for shorter trades, like Corki, funnily enough. Next one we have fighter items. There's not too much to talk about here, but there's mostly just these two. Blade of the Ruined King is losing a lot of on-hit damage and gaining a lot of stats. I'm on board with that. Borg was a more healthy item back when it was in the single-digit current health damage and not double digits. I didn't like how it was such a weird item to build, but once you finished it, you could basically one-shot anybody. Not really one-shot, but you could shred anybody. Borg was always a tank buster item, right? But you usually had to combine it with more items than just itself. These days, Blade of the Ruined King is arguably the strongest first purchase in the game. Like, for most people, once they get Borg, no tank or bruiser can stand up against them. And I hate that, because despite being a Borg abuser myself back when I built it on Renekton and Yona and stuff like that, yes, I play Yona myself every now and then, I'm guilty, you can kill me for that later. But seriously, I just didn't like how the item became super overpowered, and I think this will balance it out a bit. It will still be a good item, I just think it will be a bit more situational. Then you have Overlord's Bloodmail, which some of you may remember. It used to be in the game before. I don't remember if it was like this, but something similar to that. Essentially, it's AD and HP. You get bonus attack damage based on your base HP, I believe, not bonus HP. And then you get more AD again based on your missing health. This property was once attached to Gore Drinker back in the day. You guys may remember it was the Gore Drinker meta. That was a fun time. Now it's being attached here. This will be good to have on anyone who likes to build a mixture of both. I would definitely see myself building this on Renekton. You can also see this maybe on Mundo, possibly, because Mundo is kind of broken with AD and HP. Then again, he might just go full tank. Tank items. So tanks are the next class that got significantly changed overall. Maybe not significantly changed, but still pretty similar. For one, Anathema's chains got removed. I'm okay with that. I do sometimes build Anathemas if I'm fighting against Darius's Mundo, for example. But the execution behind Anathema's chains did not match the intention. Hullbreaker and Anathemas came out at the same time. Hullbreaker gave champions an option to go for a split pushing win condition, while Anathemas was built to counter side lanes, especially for tanks, because tanks were understandably pretty bad at fighting 1v1. The problem was, Anathemas didn't make you better at fighting split pushes, it just made you harder to kill against split pushes, but it didn't stop split pushes from split pushing. So the only time I really took it was if I was playing Tahm Kench or Mundo, and then I took it against like Darius, for example, because he would never be able to kill me fast enough. Or not kill me fast enough, but he would never be able to damage me to a point where he can execute me single, so like Garen and whatnot. Overall, I think Anathema's chains is too niche. It needs to be more generally usable for tanks, but then again, if they do that, that just might make tanks unstoppable. Apart from that, no major changes to the rest of the tank items, just a few balance changes here and there. Except Warmogs. I do want to talk about Warmogs. Warmogs is going to 1000 HP. That is absurd. However, similar to Anathemas, Warmogs is just too niche. The best application for Warmogs is neutral or for sieges, because if you take damage, you could just back off, recover, and then come back into the fight. I think a lot of tanks don't enjoy building Warmogs because it's only health, it doesn't provide anything else. It used to provide cooldown reduction. I think like 20 ability haste, making it somewhat usable on super tanks. But most champions, they would rather have armor and magic resist because it's a bit more effective. True damage is not quite as common compared to percent health damage, which is very common. And though health is a good coverage for both options, if they have, like I said, any summons of percent health damage, this is useless. Plus, not only that, teamfights are not about wars of attrition, they're all about who can one-shot the other first. That makes warmogs kind of irrelevant because you're not going to stay alive to regenerate all of that unless you are backing off, but tanks are usually right in the thick of things. This is overall a net positive. No one cares about the base HP regeneration when you have the warmog's passive attached to it, so I think people are good with that. Mages are not really getting much, they're just getting a new item, and that's fine because mages came out the most fortunate from Season 14. What they're getting is Blackfire Torch, essentially replacing the old Liandry's Anguish, because you might remember Liandry's Torment, or rather Liandry's Anguish became Liandry's Torment, which has the same stats and similarities to Demonic Embrace. Then Blackfire Torch is becoming similar to Liandry's Anguish back in the Mythic. I know it's confusing, just bear with me. So essentially, the way it works is that ability damage burns enemies for a flat amount of magic damage per second, and for each champion, large, and epic monster affected by this, you get 4% AP. So hypothetically, if you're fighting in Baron or Dragon Pit, you can get up to 24% bonus AP. This is a must-have for Karthus, this is a must-have for Brand, maybe Anivia, I'm not really sure about that, definitely Brand, we all know it's going to be for Brand. But essentially, Blackfire Torch and Liandry's Torment are going to be the new Liandry's Anguish Demonic Embrace combo. Might even be a bit stronger. Poke damage and damage over time have a place in the meta, and they should. At the same time, I kinda don't like it when one ability burns me for all of my HP, so I'm not a fan of this, but who knows, maybe it might not be that bad. Moving on, we have assassin items and support, which not really that important, I don't care about it too much. Runes, we're gonna go over runes really quickly, and I think that about wraps it up. Starting with the precision tree. Press the attack is being adjusted to where instead of being focused on the target that you're attacking, it just gives you a total damage buff, which is fine. I always felt like Press the Attack played second fiddle to Conqueror, since Conqueror was a lot more general, whereas Press the Attack was only for certain champions who could get their proc damage really quickly, and for short traits like Runekton, Urgot, and stuff like that. This makes Press the Attack more applicable, which is nice, because you can get the 3-hit proc on someone and then start attacking everyone for tons of damage. Next one is Lethal Tempo, it's getting removed. Thank the Lord, anything to nerf Yona, that's all I ask. But anyways, moving on. Overheal is getting taken out, which is fine. I always felt like Overheal was definitely the worst of the 3 tier 1 precision runes, because Triumph and Presence of Mind are just too good. It has been replaced though with Absorb Life. You can think of it like Trundle's passive, Cho'Gath passive, where after killing a minion or anything for that matter, you'd restore a small amount of HP. Now this on the other hand has more incentive to be taken over Triumph and Presence of Mind, especially if you're trying to scale more towards the late game. Overheal was always useless in my opinion. Legend Tenacity is being removed. This is what I want to talk about Legend Tenacity. We're nerfing Tenacity on Merchants. We took away the Tenacity from Unflinching. Granted, we did reimburse it with the stat runes, but still, we lost Unflinching. Now we're losing Legend Tenacity. While I am relieved that you can't reach absurd levels of Tenacity anymore and make crowd control useless, I also don't think you should bring Tenacity down to 0 because crowd control is pretty broken. I do remember reading a comment on one of Vandal's videos where he previewed all the changes. This season will devolve into whichever team gets stunlocked first. That kind of exacerbates the damage burst meta we've had for so long. They're overcorrecting, you don't have to take away that much Tenacity. That being said, I understand that Legend Tenacity is a pretty uncharacteristic rune to have for the precision tree. What they're replacing it with is instead Legend Haste, which gives you haste per stack. There are a number of mages and assassins who like to go precision second because of Presence of Mind and things like that, but they have no use for any of the legend runes, nor do they really care too much about the bottom runes either because it's kind of hard to find the right circumstances to use them. You don't need attack speed from Legend Alacrity, you don't need lifesteal from Legend Bloodline, and though Tenacity is helpful, both the Mage and Assassin class want to avoid being crowd controlled in the first place because even half a second of crowd control is enough to one-shot you. So Legend Haste is more applicable for concerned parties. Having said that, I still believe that losing this much Tenacity will be very detrimental for the game. Then Domination Tree, you're losing Predator, which is fine, and Ingenious Hunter, which is fine, it's pretty gimmicky stuff anyway. Resolve is being ignored for the most part, and then we have Inspiration. Futures Mark is being taken out, and we have Cashback. Cashback refunds a portion of the gold that you spent when you purchase a legendary item. So if we use 3,000 as a benchmark, and you get 6% of that back, you get 180 gold back. That kind of doesn't seem like a lot in my opinion, because Futures Market gives you a bit more. And overall, if you have 5 legendary items averaging maybe about 20,000 gold, then you're receiving 60% of 20 would be about 1,400 gold. It's not bad, it's something that you will realize a lot more when you purchase your 3rd and 4th item, but in the early game, this item is pretty bad. Time Warp Tonic is... I don't know how to feel about this. Okay, so for one, it doesn't work on biscuits, and it doesn't work on mana, although to be fair, Corrupting Potion is no longer in the game, and you don't get the movement speed anymore. However, what it does is it gives you bonus healing, so you get 140% HP instead of 100% HP, with a portion of that being given to you immediately. The idea is to make it so potions are more effective and that they heal you for more, but I still think that Time Warp Tonic really sucks. I'm sorry, no one's going to take a rune that gives you 40% more healing on potions, because no one buys potions after like the third buy. At most, you get what, 5 pots in a game maximum? That's 200 more HP healed or something like that. No one will waste a rune slot on that. That's terrible. We have Time Warp Tonic and Triple Tonic. Get Triple Tonic. Triple Tonic gives you a full level at level 9. Why would you ever get Time Warp Tonic? It gives you bonus adaptive force, it gives you bonus gold upon killing minions, I think, and it also gives you a full elixir of skill. That alone is worth 3 Time Warp Tonics stacked right on top of each other. They need to fix this rune. This rune just sucks. And then, yeah, that's roughly about it. We have one more rune to talk about. We have Jack of all trades. For every different stat you gain from an item, you get bonus ability haste, and then you also get bonus adaptive force at 5 and 10 stacks. I don't know if they refer to each stat as counted once. For example, attack damage is only considered once, attack speed is only considered once, movement speed is only considered once, or if it's like, let's say your first item is AD ability haste, AD ability haste and health, and then your second item is also AD ability haste and health. Is that going to be 6 stacks or is that going to be 3 only? If it's the latter where it's only counted once, this is definitely a late game scaling rune. It's going to take you quite a while to get 10 unique stats. That being said, you do get 25 bonus adaptive force, which I believe is about 800 to 1000 gold. That's not bad for a component rune. It's probably more efficient than Gathering Storm. I don't know, we'll have to see with this one. But yeah, that's about it. Just a few minion XP adjustments, and then this. The guy says he has no idea what this actually controls. I think the death streak penalty refers to how much gold the diminishing return value is impacted by, so a person will be worth less and less and less gold the more they feed. I think that's what that's for. Okay, so overall, in reference to the ADC items, what I like about it, like I said before, is that it's going back to what it was before and trying to start over again. My problem is that only the ADC items are going back, while we still have all the new fighter items, mage items, tank items, and stuff like that. I'm not sure how the two are going to be compatible with each other. Like, will they mix perfectly fine, or will ADC items get even worse because they're back to where they were before while everything else has been modernized? So this patch, for me, will either do a lot to change the game, or it will worsen the problem of ADCs being really useless right now. That about wraps up my assessment for this patch. I think it's a fairly significant one. It's obviously not as big as the preseason patches, but something's gotta happen, right? They gotta do something for the mid-season patch, because around this point is when the game starts to get kind of stale anyway. What do you guys think though? Feel free to share in the comments down below, and if you made it this far, a like and subscribe would be very much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other live discussions, I guess, if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.